In the heart of South Carolina, swamp under moonlit skies, crooked sheriffs and ghostly tales, they whisper, they arise. Gator sightings and midnight chases through the thick dark mist.
The new song Swamp Justice is out. It's on Spotify. It's on all your social media. You want to do a video and tag that. Just look for Swamp Justice under James Seidel, and you'll find it from Robin KSA coming at you here. We're going to try to make this one just a shorter version today about Alex Murdaugh. We're on 97.7 WVFF Veterans for Freedom Radio, the Truth and Broadcasting Corporation. And here's what, let me turn this music off. Here's what's interesting about the South Carolina Supreme Court, which, by the way, just said the other day that they are going to have oral arguments in the case of Richard Alexander Murdaugh. And I wanted to chat real quick about a particular case that they just signed an order to, and it may give you some insight as to what the South Carolina Supreme Court is going to do in the case of Alex Murdaugh. And it has to do with a guy by the name of Joseph Erb, E-R-B. You can look him up. And the opinion issued back in November, I can't believe it's December already, but the State v. John Erb offers, I think, the clearest window that you're going to get on how the court views errors that arise in the jury room. Sound familiar? And what remedies follow when the integrity of the deliberations have been compromised. Those are two very strong sentences, and it gets even stronger. In the court's ruling, as they refer to Erb, was absolutely sweeping. I mean, it was an 8-page substitute opinion where the justices held that the trial judge mishandled jury polling, and he improperly intervened with a single juror, not multiple jurors, single juror, and erroneously declared a mistrial without manifest necessity. And as a result, and here's where the rubber meets the road. And as a result, the court barred any retrial on both the murder and the voluntary manslaughter charges. So what the Supreme Court did was basically they invoked double jeopardy protections and reversed the lower court outright. I mean, this one deserves it all. And so if you go to crowdandcast.com, I've got it up online, ccnewsnetwork.com, Crowd and Cask investigations. Go check it out. You can see their ruling there. And it starts with Justice John Kittredge. He is the Chief Justice. And Justice Few, Justice James Jr., Justice Hill, Justice Vernon. They put out a strong opinion on how the lower courts need to handle juries. And in the Alex Murdaugh trial, you can believe what you see on Hulu, which is fiction. You can believe what people say in public, or you can believe what they say in private, or you can believe the facts. How about that? Let's have facts. Bored people don't like facts. So I reached out to a couple people, and many immediately noted that the opinion lands just 10 weeks before the Supreme Court is about to hear oral arguments. in the case of State v. Murdaugh, which is scheduled to be held on February 11th, 2026. Yours truly will be there. So make sure you're there so I can see you. And I also attached the appeal from Colleton County in the Court of General Sessions. And the state of South Carolina is the respondent. The Alex Murdaugh is the appellate. And this is going to be heard. They have all filed their motions. Hundreds of pages of paper have been filed on this case. Now, the Erb case and the Murdaugh cases are very different, factually speaking. But what happens when the integrity of jury deliberations is damaged by an officer of the court? And Becky Hill, whether you want to like it or not, was an officer of the court. And people like Myra Crosby, who I wrote the book for, which is on sale on Amazon, go check it out today, called Because Enough is Enough. She writes a whole book about how the jury was tampered with, in her opinion. And not to mention that there are other jurors. Now, there are some jurors that say, oh, yeah, I didn't hear Becky at all, but they're also selling books saying the same thing. So we'll just see. But here's what happened at Erb. Called it the mishandling. So in the Erb case, the trial appeared to be wrapping up very cleanly, and the jury announced it had reached a unanimous verdict, not guilty of murder. Was no longer, let me back this up. It had reached a unanimous verdict, not guilty of murder, but guilty of voluntary manslaughter. Right. But when the jury was polled, so they asked each individual juror, juror number 5, is this what you think? Is your vote yes or no? So when they say they polled them, that's what the judge did. And the 11th juror voted that the guilty verdict was no longer her verdict. Instead, instructing the jury to resume deliberations, which the judge should have done according to the court. The required next step, of course, under South Carolina state law, Circuit Judge Bentley Price, he questioned the lone juror individually, despite objections from the prosecution and the defense. So the juror testified in open court that she had been pressured by other jurors, sound familiar, and had changed her vote away from not guilty simply to get over with it. Does that sound familiar too? 45 minutes to get a verdict in Murdaugh, which a trial lasts 6 weeks. Come on. So simply to get over it within minutes without hearing argument or considering alternatives, the judge summoned the rest of the jury, declared a mistrial, and discharged them. 1 week later, the state of South Carolina placed Erb back on the trial roster for murder. So what the Supreme Court in South Carolina is saying here is that they blasted Judge Bentley in his handling of the situation, calling it misguided. And this is in court documents, called it misguided and unsupported by any legal necessity. And its language was unusually sharp for a high court that often writes in academic restraint. They went after Bentley on this one. They were outraged. And went on to say, had the trial court heeded the arguments of counsel and instructed the jury to continue deliberating the situation, would likely have been avoided, the justices wrote. The court held that jeopardy had attached to both charges and permanently barred from any retrial. I mean, where's the gong? Actually, we need a gong. So that was a major rebuke by the Supreme Court to the lower court, but also for the state's argument that the verdict had imploded and could not be restored. So here's the roadmap for Alex Murdaugh. I've already sent this to his attorneys. I'm sure they were well aware of it, but the Erb decision arrives as the South Carolina Supreme Court is going to decide whether Alex Murdaugh's double murder conviction must be thrown out due to alleged jury tampering by the former Colleton County Clerk of Court, one Mary Rebecca Hill. And the allegations are among the most serious ever raised in the South Carolina criminal court. And they are. You know what? As we take a break, I was like, who was it? I think, here's the breaking news. It's crinkle of papers. So I'm going to do that. The allegations are among these: that Hill repeatedly entered deliberation rooms during the trial. It was right down the steps from her office. That she coached jurors not to be misled by the defense. That she pushed them toward a guilty verdict to sell more copies of her book. I don't even remember the name of her book, honestly. But mine is Defending Alex Murdaugh Not Guilty by Reasonable Doubt, and Because Enough is Enough. And my third one is called Trumped Up, for our beloved president who pardoned Josh Pruitt in the J6. It's a good read. And that jurors later confirmed these interactions influenced their thinking. Mandy Pierce being one of them. She was juror Z in the Justice Toll hearing back in January 2024. But in the Murdaugh, what they call appellate brief, the defense refers to Hill as a state official. She is a state official, was a state official until she resigned. She was elected by the people of Colleton County. She is works as the official, let's call it gatekeeper of the records, as the clerk of court. And they argued that her actions constitute structural error, a level of constitutional defect so severe that the verdict must be vacated without any harmless error analysis. What that means in legal terms is they want the state of South Carolina Supreme Court to vacate the verdict of guilty and just throw it out altogether. Now, my question is, and leave it in the comments, and I've asked this, and maybe I've had the answer, and I don't know, because it's actually a 2-year anniversary today of my cancer surgery, and I got cancer brain sometime. But so somebody tell me, if they throw out, if the Supreme Court vacates his guilty verdict. So go to my social media if you're listening to this on 97.7 FM. If you're on social media, if you're on YouTube, leave in the comments. Will the state of South Carolina have to go try to get a new indictment? That's my question. Or can they just go with the indictment that they have and just refile the thing and go forward? I'm thinking they probably have to get a new indictment, but I don't know. So come to my social media and leave the comments. So yeah, she's a state official. Now, the United States Supreme Court in Washington, D.C., they have long held that the state officials may not influence, contact, or advocate in front of jurors about the merits of the case, such as Remmer versus United States, Parker versus Gladden, and Turner v. Louisiana, make it clear that when such interferences occur, says the United States Supreme Court, prejudice is automatically presumed. Now, here's a surprise. the state of South Carolina doesn't want to use Remmer as their case for defending this. There's a surprise. But this new Erb ruling, the South Carolina Supreme Court just ruled on John Erb. It reinforces that exact constitutional theme by our United States Supreme Court, the law of the land. I got to be better on these things. Let me do this again. The law of the land. So let's call it the thematic overlap, jury integrity above all else. Let me say that again. Jury integrity above all else. So the parallels between the two cases, Erb and Murdaugh, in Erb, a judge interfered with a single juror, just one little juror, during polling, destroying the independence of deliberations. That's what our Supreme Court in the state of South Carolina has said. In Murdaugh, or Murdaugh, however, wherever you're from, Bo, where you from, Bo? A clerk of court allegedly influenced multiple jurors during the trial, raising questions whether the verdict was the product of independent deliberation or external pressure. Remember what I said about the United States Supreme Court. They look at interference occurs automatically. That prejudice is automatically assumed when any interference happens. And you've got more than one juror that said that exactly happened. In fact, the state of South Carolina has gone on and said, yes, in fact, we agree and we state that, yes, Becky Hill did make statements to the jury that she shouldn't have. In fact, they referred to them as fleeting and foolish statements to the jury. That, according to our United States Supreme Court, is interference. When Becky Hill is talking to them, other than what do you want, a soda or a water today with your lunch? Is the temperature all right? Do you need a Band-Aid? When she starts talking about Murdaugh and watch his body language and look at him and don't believe him and don't do this and don't do that, that is automatically presumed to be prejudice. And the state of South Carolina has just ruled in the John Erb case, ERB, that that's exactly what happened. And they have tossed his murder conviction and they put double jeopardy in there, and the state cannot retry this guy for murder or anything. Go after him for a traffic violation. And in Erb, the South Carolina Supreme Court stressed the absolute need, not want, need for unanimous decisions to be reached freely without coercion. Without coercion. In Murdaugh, many jurors, in fact, reported feeling pressured, watched, and guided. And the one that they couldn't manipulate, according to Myra Crosby, was her. And there was a group of people that conspired, schemed to have her removed. You want to read all about that, just go into crimecast.com and type in Myra Crosby or Juror 785, and you can read all about that. So all you murder caters, I got news for you. you're going to lose your absolute mind when their decision comes out, because in my opinion, and put me on the record right now, the state of South Carolina is going to overturn the conviction of one Richard Alex Murdaugh. Are they going to do what they did here in Erb? I don't know, but it seems like they did it for less in Erb, but we'll see. And also in Erb, the court held that the judge's mistake was structural, and because of that, it required reversal. Think of that. Think of what I just said there. That the judge's mistake, now we have Becky Hill's mistake. The judge's mistake in Erb was structural and required reversal. Well, the state of South Carolina has already admitted that Becky Hill said fleeting and foolish things about Alex Murdaugh in the trial, but according to the state of South Carolina, it didn't affect the outcome, even though jurors did say it affected the outcome. And Justice Toll twisted and twined up juror Z to get rid of her statement, but it's there nonetheless. But in Murdaugh, the defense argues that jury tampering by a state actor, Becky Hill, is structural, and it must result in a new trial. Listen, I'd love to see a new trial. It would give me content to no end. But he may also just get the whole darn thing thrown right out. And I'll be there to watch it. I'll tell you that. Homicide conviction of one John Erb, and bar all future prosecution. The state can't go back and refile anything on this guy and for this particular murder, based solely on a declared mistrial. The stakes in the Murdaugh appeal, it's more significant than ever. The alleged misconduct was not accidental. It wasn't impulsive. It appears it was purposeful, repeated, and profit-driven. Oh, who is doing the profit-driven? They're going to look at me like, no, you're looking at the wrong podcaster here. So that's a big fact. And in the Supreme Court, unafraid to overturn, I mean, let's give it to them. For months, we've got legal analysts speculating whether the Supreme Court would be reluctant to overturn such a nationally watched conviction. I don't think they care, and nor should they. But the Erb decision provides a partial answer to what they may do in Murdaugh. And honestly, this is they've shown their cards, because this is how they are thinking based off of the Erb decision. And it's a blunt, this is a blunt reversal in a murder case, and the court just signals it will not abandon constitutional principles simply because the case carries political or public pressure. They just won't do it. They have, I'm happy about this, and I can't wait for the people to start attacking the Supreme Court and calling them political appointees. But they placed integrity ahead of the optics. Let me say that again. They placed integrity above optics. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay. And the tone of the opinion, it matters in the state of South Carolina, and it matters for Alex Murdaugh, and it reads like a warning shot, that a reminder that safeguarding jury independence is the court's highest duty. If I was Howard Stern, I'd say you said duty, but in any case, involving juror influence, whether caused by a judge or a clerk, it's going to be scrutinized with exacting constitutional standards in which we all live by. Feel free to hate Alex Murdaugh. Feel free to think he's a bad person. Feel free to do all these things, but do not for 1 second do not think that he does not deserve his constitutional rights, just like you do, who you think you're not a bad person, that you have every right to every constitutional thing you want, including when you go out and yell and scream and defame people. And, oh, it's my First Amendment right. Oh, okay. But he's got rights too. And that's where I think people get confused. They think, oh, well, he's a bad person, he shouldn't have rights. He's a bad person in your opinion. They don't look at it that way. So the justices have placed integrity above optics. And, the tone of the opinion, it matters. As I said before, I think it's a warning shot. Jury independence is the court's highest duty, and I applaud that. Let's give them another applause. And that's not for me, that's for the Supreme Court. So for Murdaugh's defense team, I think the Erb decision is a gift, an absolute silver platter. Christmas isn't even here yet. And here is a gift for you, Jim and Dick. And for the Attorney General's office, I think he's getting a lump of coal here, because I think it's an early indication that the court may be prepared to confront allegations of Becky Hill head on. But looking ahead to February, again, Crown and Cask is going to be there February 11th to hear oral arguments, and they will begin in the consolidated appeal of one Alex Murdaugh and 2 issues before the judge. Direct appeal of the double murder conviction of his son Paul and his wife Maggie, and 2, the appeal from Judge Toll's denial of a new trial motion based on alleged jury tampering. And I'm telling you guys, this Erb ruling suggests that the justices are going to examine not only whether misconduct occurred, but whether the structural integrity of the verdict has been permanently compromised, regardless of the state's evidence. You've got to get that through your head. And if the court follows the same reasoning that applied in Erb just last week, the analysis is going to hinge on 4 questions. Are you ready for the 4 questions? Did an officer of the state interfere with the jury, the Alex Murdaugh jury? Did the interference relate to the merits of the case? Did the interference, known or unknown to the defense, was it known or unknown to the defense at the time? No, it was found out. After, and given the allegations on the record, those are not easy hurdles for the state. Let's be clear on that one. If I'm the state of South Carolina, you might as well just suck this one up and move on to the next one. I mean, he's going to be in prison for the next 39 years anyway, albeit in a federal prison, not in a state of South Carolina prison. But the South Carolina Supreme Court's message is unmistakable that trials must be fair. Jurors must be free from influence, and verdicts must be the product of independent deliberation, not pressure from the very officials that were tasked to protecting the process. So in February, those principles are going to be tested, and under the most scrutinized criminal case in South Carolina history, at least that I know of. And the Erb decisions, I think, just gave us that early evidence of which way the court's leaning. I've done a lot of different side-by-side comparisons to this. Go to crownandcast.com, go check it out. I talk about the type of interference, who interfered, nature of the misconduct, when did it occur, effect on the verdict, legal standard applied, the Supreme Court outcome, all of these different things. So if Erb is the barometer, I got a news for the state. Their weather report in the Murdaugh case looks bleak. And the court made clear that when an officer of the court interferes with a jury, even once, even briefly, as the state of South Carolina has already admitted publicly, fleeting and foolish comments, the entire verdict collapses. And in Murdaugh, the allegations are not brief, they are not accidental, they are not harmless, they are structural. Thank you. So that's it. And this is basically the credibility of South Carolina's entire judicial system is based off of, having a clean bill of health in your jury pool. But go check it out. You can come to Crime and Cask, type in Becky Hill, type in jury pool, type in whatever you want. But it's coming, and I'm on the record right now. I think they're going to give it to them. I don't think we're going to get an answer at all that day. But it's coming. It's coming in 2026. And you're listening to Swamp Justice Radio on 97.7 FM, WVFF, Veterans for Freedom Radio, the Truth in Broadcasting Corporation. We are back with Swamp Justice again. Swamp Justice is available wherever you get your music. I get mine from Spotify, which is where this podcast is, along with YouTube. Check me out on TikTok. I have hundreds of thousands of fans. We have a lot of fun. We have a lot of people who love us. We have some haters. They're dumb and defamatory, and they hide like they're scared of me, which they should be. So just keep it up, because the clicks keep coming. Dummies. We'll see you guys later. 97.7 FM, WVFF, Veterans Freedom Radio. I am here. Thanks, and we'll see you next time on Swamp Justice Radio.